Big Francis Ngannou was here today. He's on my hit list in an exhibition fight, however he wants it, in a cage, in a boxing ring, boxing gloves, UFC gloves. We can make it happen.
Definitely sometime next year, 2023, that fight will happen. We're going to sort things out and get settled, ready to go.
Rarely do we ever get breaking news right after an event, and it seems like, according to both parties, Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou are indeed dead set to fight each other. The only thing that gets in the way is that Ngannou right now is not a free agent, and he potentially will negotiate with other organizations to see which one can give him the best money. Perhaps he will talk to the UFC just to find out how much they will give him. But at the end of the day, it's hard to see him passing up a one-time opportunity against Tyson Fury. Might retire from the sport. He is saying that he's never going to fight in pro boxing ever again. He said he will take up exhibition fights and fun fights, as he still will get paid, and it's something that's exciting to him. But as a professional boxer, his days are probably over. And right after the fight, Ngannou came out in an interview and said, this is the fight he's looking at next. He's not saying maybe, he's not saying he might do it. He's saying, yes, this is going to happen. He said he's going to wait until 2023 when he's a free agent. He can do whatever he wants, make a bunch of money fighting Tyson Fury with MMA gloves, potentially in a ring, or if Ngannou wants to do it in a cage, Fury's up for that as well. And if that's the case, I'm pretty sure Tyson Fury will accept the fight, because he's just saying that he wants to do something for fun and just get paid doing it. Most likely that kind of event is not going to have other marquee fighters, so a lot of the revenue is going to go to both Fury and Ngannou, which is perfect for both of them. And after the fight, whether Ngannou wins or loses, he might just come back to the UFC. It's a win-win situation for him. Will he win? The chances are very slim, as Tyson Fury is potentially the best boxer of all time. It's hard to see any boxer in history actually beat this guy. There's maybe a few from the past, but when you have to go to the absolute elite boxers in history, it's hard to see someone like Francis do the job. I mean, because compared to even Dillian Whyte, Ngannou does not have the same kind of boxing skill. He probably has more power than Whyte does. He's longer than Dillian. He potentially has a better chin than Dillian, and seems to be more athletic. He can change some things about him when he starts to just focus on boxing only, because in MMA you got to focus on a lot of things. So he's not going to box necessarily the same way he did in MMA when he goes into boxing. Some things are going to be a little bit different, of course. He's probably going to target the body a lot more. He doesn't need to headhunt in the heavyweight division in the UFC. Everybody headhunts. Everybody can knock anybody out with one punch, especially with 4-ounce gloves. That may be a similar thing when he goes up against Tyson Fury, because generally, traditional boxers punch more powerfully than any other combat sports athlete in the world, just with their hands. But the fact that they're putting in 4-ounce gloves, it doesn't even matter. Ngannou might knock Tyson Fury out with one punch if he connects. And the thing about MMA gloves is, defensively, Ngannou's already used to it. He knows that putting up a guard is not as effective. He knows how important the footwork is to get away from punches. And if it's in a cage, he potentially will know how to cut off the cage and use the cage to his advantage better than Fury can. So there are some advantages for Francis Ngannou when it comes to the gloves and potentially in a cage. But the thing about Tyson Fury is, he's already a master at head movement. He has better head movement than pretty much every UFC heavyweight that's ever existed. Francis Ngannou had a hard time hitting Ciryl Gane. Imagine him now trying to hit Tyson Fury, who's longer, taller, better head movement in general, maybe not as fast with his footwork, but overall seems to be harder to hit. So even with small gloves, it's going to be hard to catch him. He's not going to make those kind of defensive mistakes unless instinctively, when a left hook or right overhand or uppercut or something comes at him, there is that chance by instinct that he does pick up his hand to block the punch and it gets right through. That's Ngannou's biggest hope in the fight, is that Tyson Fury reverts back to some of his boxing instincts that are only dangerous to do with MMA gloves. Now when we talk about offense, with 4-ounce gloves, I'm pretty sure Tyson Fury can hurt Francis Ngannou. Hurt him to the point to potentially finish him later as the fight goes on, because Ngannou doesn't have great cardio. Tyson Fury can absolutely go 12 rounds if that's what it's going to be. And the other thing is, when it comes to precision, just like we saw in the Dillian Whyte fight, Tyson Fury can land right around the hands, right through the guard down the center. He has sniper-like precision with his hands now. And it potentially is going to force Francis Ngannou to be a lot more aggressive in the fight. If Ngannou makes the fight more wild, the higher his chances are to victory, but also the higher chances are to getting knocked out. That is probably what he has to fall on though. He needs to make something happen. He cannot make this a technical boxing match. He cannot try to beat Tyson Fury punch by punch, movement by movement, angle by angle. He can't do that. He needs to make the fight wild and dirty, unorthodox, and super fast pace. And I know what some people are thinking. If Deontay Wilder can hurt Tyson Fury, they're pretty sure that Francis Ngannou can as well. Because there are a lot of people that do believe that Deontay Wilder is less technical than Ngannou. It may seem that way as Ngannou has more variety in the punches he throws. He will throw uppercuts with both hands. He has a decent jab. He has a great left hook. He has the right overhand and stuff. His right overhand is very sloppy. Every other punch is actually pretty nice. It's gotten so much better in form. He's really polished his hands, where he was able to connect with a triple jab into the right cross against Stipe Miocic. His uppercuts have always been on point, very precise with those. Left hook as a counter is always there. His front step left hook is not as good as his back step left hook, but back step left hooks against Tyson Fury is not really going to be a thing because Fury has a reach advantage over him and he doesn't really get into his opponent's range like that. So it's going to be up to Ngannou to really get aggressive, move forward, and land some of these shots. Overhands are going to be a thing. They are pretty sloppy from him, but that has to be a thing. But ultimately, is he more technical than Deontay Wilder? I don't think so. In terms of precision, his right hand specifically, I mean, it's pretty close when you really look at it. But the thing about Deontay Wilder is he has 12-round cardio. He seems to be more precise than Ngannou is, and he has so much confidence in that right hand. He lands on everybody. Even though I can pick out some of the things that Ngannou can have an advantage in some ways he could potentially catch Tyson Fury, which is really going to come down to mistakes, not necessarily what Ngannou does well. An early prediction for the fight, I have to say that Tyson Fury wins 80% of the time, maybe 90%, but that small 10 to 20% chance for Ngannou is an explosive one, is a hurtful one. If he beats Tyson Fury, it's going to be by a devastating knockout, like horrendous knockout, because as we know, just putting Fury down is not enough. You have to put the guy's lights out, and rarely does anybody on the planet punch like Francis Ngannou. Imagine Francis Ngannou knocks Tyson Fury out cold. Something that Deontay Wilder couldn't do, something Dillian Whyte couldn't do, something Klitschko couldn't do. Imagine it was Francis Ngannou that actually did it. His stock would raise so high, he'd be one of the biggest free agent fighters in history. Potentially the biggest. And his negotiating power and his leverage to do what he wants would be at an insane level. Boxing promoters would start hitting this guy up. MMA promoters would start hitting this guy up. It would be a battleground with these promoters trying to grab this guy. Because not only do people want heavyweights, especially in boxing, heavyweights tended to be the biggest stars in the sport. But a guy that can knock you out, a guy that knocked out Tyson Fury, a guy who has the look, he's intelligent, he's an interesting personality. He comes from a place where there's not a lot of champions from, and will have this whole representation to him where they can go into an entirely new continent, entirely new market to promote this guy even further. If Ngannou beats Tyson Fury, it may be the biggest thing that's ever happened to his career. Predicting the pay-per-view buys is kind of up in the air because Tyson draws well when he fights Deontay Wilder, and Francis Ngannou by himself, we don't know what he can draw. For example, when he fought Cyril Gane, we don't know how well that pay-per-view did. So I could potentially see this pay-per-view selling at least 500,000 buys, and I think that's like a bare minimum of how big the fight is going to be. So we're gonna have to wait until 2023, and we get to see this super fight exhibition match between the two best heavyweights on the planet.